What's up, people? It's me, Hannu, back again. Okay guys, it's been a while since I did my previous vlog, and it's winter solstice and I'm so happy about it. It's the darkest day in our part of the world, so I decided to pretty spontaneously shoot the video again, and let's see where it goes. This time I don't have that fancy microphone, but as it happens with this combination of having this this smartphone and that, there were some issues, and those of you who listen to my video know what I'm talking about. But I think this time you're gonna hear my voice pretty well. Okay, so guys, it was I think it was early November last time I did my vlog, and since then some pretty important stuff has happened, and where do I get started? There would be so many topics to cover. Just recently I read some linguistics. It's been a long time since the last, so there's even the temptation to talk about languages today, but I'll try to keep to those kind of important topics, or let's say cohesive topics. So last time the US election was coming up, and there was some tension for sure what was going to happen. Well, now obviously we know what happened, who won, although I think there's some circles in the US who still don't know who actually won the election. But I was hoping in my blog that there was going to be a peaceful election, and luckily that turned out to be the case, and I think there's now some good developments coming up in the US, certainly regarding the pandemic, and rest assured I'm going to be talking about the pandemic very soon, and quite much. But perhaps before we go into that, so I don't know, those few of you who actually watched my video, probably I talked a little bit about some perhaps career wise things going on with my life, and I know I was deliberately a little bit mystical about those, but we'll see if I continue with these videos just how much into detail I'm gonna go regarding those career plans. But let's put it that way, that what I was trying to accomplish at the end of this year, it didn't work out this time around, but we'll see how that will pan out in the future. For sure there's quite a heck of a lot to do in my present job, and actually what I can tell you is that where I am right now is in my workplace, and I will be continuing here in my present employer. Let's just call it a university, a rather big one where I live. And as you know, I am a psychologist, so you can kind of do the maths what I actually am doing here. But now let's go back to the I guess you could say the only big topic of the year, the pandemic. So there's been some very important developments, obviously, since early November. We got the results in from the front-running vaccine developers. So Pfizer/BioNTech, I believe, released their results first, and soon after that Moderna, and both of them really provided us with very good results as to the efficiency, but also the safety of the vaccines. and obviously they are this kind of new vaccine technology, messenger RNA, and that's the kind of thing, that's going to raise some questions with the general public, obviously, because it's a new thing. But as for myself, I am quite excited about these vaccines, and quite happy that we got so good results. And as we all know, the US has already started with their vaccination, and has also the United Kingdom. And as for myself, living within the EU, actually just today we received news that there's going to be some what I believe is called this emergency use authorization coming up. So it's not going to be, as I believe, a full-blown permission yet for that for those two front-running vaccines that I just mentioned, but nonetheless, it's obviously the starting point for this full-blown vaccination also within the EU. And so, yeah, what can we say? It's winter solstice. The winter. The Christmas is coming up, and we get this beautiful news, basically about the vaccination, and so basically good news, and I guess now a chance to a little bit talk about these COVID topics, but also to tie up, I guess, some of the loose ends that I talked to you last time. So my thoughts on the pandemic now, and the let's say the more global situation. So I think what you could describe for many of us as the kind of basic feeling this year has been that of confusion, and just, or you could say a set of confusing thoughts. And I think most of you, or many of you, can agree with me that as to the inherent danger posed by by COVID or SARS-CoV-2 is I think a source of much confusion. And even to this day, we're so late now in this year, in this pandemic year, but there's still so much, confusion, or let's say uncertainty about the inherent dangers or risks about this new coronavirus. And so I think we're going to have that, and who knows for how long. And I just remembered, actually, if you'll permit, I'm going to see if I can find for you guys an important link, but let's have that at the end of this vlog, if I manage to find it here. But so that link also talks about the kind of long, I was going to say long COVID, but that's I guess that a little bit off topic. I'm talking about the long tail, the long aftermath of this pandemic that I trust that we're going to be entering into as the 2021 unfolds. It's going to be an interesting spring. I don't think there's any, two words about that. And I'm sorry, that's actually not proper English. So what I want to say is that there's no doubt about that being a very interesting spring. So the vaccinations, the word rolling out of vaccinations. When's that going to happen, and how long it's going to take? So just this weekend, I I read a rather long article. It was in Der Spiegel, this major journal, or how do you call that, magazine, actually, in Germany. And there was basically talk about this, what I guess you could describe as blunder, or snafu, that I believe is now a general, let's say, sentiment in Germany as regards the rollout of vaccination. Because I believe that those of you who have watched keenly on this topic, so you know that it's a very rather long preparation phase for the vaccination, and really you could say a situation where those who actually took risks, those countries, regarding the upcoming vaccines, they seem to be reaping the benefit now in the current situation. So what's going to be happening, what we're seeing now basically is that in the UK and in the US, you're going to have first, tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands, and pretty soon even millions of people getting a vaccination. Now, if you look at the numbers, so there is that confusion that if you talk about, let's say, 10 million vaccines for, let's say, any European country. So you got to divide it by two, because any patient or any citizen is going to require 2 shots of that. So that's one source of confusion. You can have some risk of confusion. So how many people are actually going to get the whole vaccination program ready? Just bear with me here. Now I found it, what I was looking for. So I'm talking about the podcast Making Sense with Sam Harris. I believe if there's anyone watching this in the US, you're going to know who Sam Harris is. But those of you who don't, so he's very famous vlogger and a scientist from the US. He was actually one of the so-called 4 horsemen who were talking about this new atheism that was, I believe, some 10 or 15 years ago, and got really famous through that. But nowadays, I believe he's just a very kind of all-round commentator and vlogger and podcast host. And basically, you can have a whole range of experts in his podcast. And this recently, it was Mr. Nicholas Christakis, I hope I got the name right, who is also a scientist and I believe quite well renowned in the US. And so the reason I raised this is that if you're going to talk about the long tail of this pandemic, then perhaps you want to be listening to this podcast, because basically what they're saying there is Mr. Christakis said, and I try to quote this or paraphrase, that from his desk, or from where he looks at these things, perhaps not as an epidemiologist per se, but as someone who knows some top people in this field. So from his desk, he foresees that this pandemic is going to go on until 2024. Okay, you got that? 2024. So that's kind of basically when the next Olympics would take place, after obviously Tokyo, which by the way still is rather somewhat uncertain, I think. So obviously, as Mr. Sam Harris also said, that it's quite a show-stopping comment by basically an expert. So I won't have time to go too much into detail about what the heck that actually meant or means. But just those of you who are watching this, so I want to kind of just basically give you this perspective that we might still be quite long in this ordeal. Obviously, not in the sense that we have been now in 2020. So it seems very obvious to me that that this year will go down in history as the pandemic year. But it's just that there's things coming up further down the road that I don't think anyone really knows certainly what's going to happen. I mean, certainly there is so much more that we know, but still, if you listen to many of the experts, still you hear that those words that we don't know very much about the SARS-CoV-2. I guess in a minute I'm going to be talking a little bit what I think Mr. Christakis meant by that 2024. But coming back to this upcoming year, and this blunder. So yeah, I'm gonna try to quote what I believe was meant by that. So I think many of us, me at least, had this little bit of confusion about. So what does it mean when these big players like the US, the EU, ordered or versus pre-ordered vaccines from, let's say, Pfizer? So it turns out that there was actually a big difference there. What the US did, they actually ordered. So they made binding agreements with, for instance, Pfizer as early as back in July this year. So what that meant was that as there's results from the trial, phase 3 trials came in, so they were basically it was a very simple thing for the authorities, FDA, CDC, to give the green light and to actually then have those vaccinations coming in. As in any contract, you're going to expect to actually have that concrete next step. Now, this is the thing. In the EU, it turns out that hasn't. Those kind of agreements didn't take place until this November. Okay, so up until that, it was all just this kind of, I don't know the legal term, but this basically this I guess you could say interest from the EU side and these kind of negotiations, towards let's say Pfizer, BioNTech, but it was not any legal agreements, or so the Spiegel article says, until this November. Now, what happened then or during those negotiations was something of a snafu or a foul up, because what they did, they didn't order enough vaccines. Bear in mind that in the EU you have, I'm going to say, 600 to 700 million inhabitants. So it's a huge population if you combine all these EU countries. And we don't have nearly enough vaccines if we just look into or look at the two front runners, Moderna and Pfizer. So what that article basically said was that it's probably going to last up until next summer, or more probably till next autumn, for at least Germans to achieve anywhere near the kind of herd immunity that I think was always meant primarily to be achieved through vaccinations, and not through this natural just letting the letting the outbreak reach all the population. So yeah, let's think about that for a second. So next fall. Now, obviously, that's not going to go down well with the German public. They're going to want better results. They're going to look at the UK and the US, where in those both countries, obviously the situation is not looking good now at all. But it is, at this crossroads, or this basically this transition phase now, where I think after a month from now, you're going to have quite a different picture from those two countries. Whereas in Germany, it's also looking rather bad now, but they're not going to have anywhere near the kind of vaccinations that you have in the UK or in the US. So we'll see how the Germans going to handle that. And in my country, which is a smaller country in the EU, we don't know yet. It seems to me that the situation is better, and perhaps there is this kind of bias that the smaller EU countries are going to have a better position in this phase, because there was this EU solidarity as regards to vaccination, and that's actually the one of the key things. What happened in the EU? So there was this kind of solidarity principle also when making those agreements with the big vaccine companies. So it's really somewhat hard to understand how those things, how those two things combine, and how come you had this foul up with the ordering. But I don't know, man. It's very, very difficult to understand sometimes these things. But I hope it's not going to ruin the whole spring for us. If and when I do another video, I'm gonna talk a little bit more about this, my thoughts about regarding the spring. But now I want us at the end to look a little bit further down the road, and as I mentioned, the upcoming years. So I think we all know a little bit what the kind of big picture is, and it is so that at any rate, it's well past 7 billion people in the world, and basically it is the case that everyone should be vaccinated, or at the very minimum, let's say 60% of the whole population. We must remember that, let's say that there's almost 8 billion people, so you're going to be talking about at least, at a minimum, 5 billion people that ought to be vaccinated. So in any scenario, it's going to take time, and my understanding is that it's going to take at least until early 2022 before we can reach those kind of proportions. Now, what that means is that if you're going to return to that, anywhere near that kind of global traffic, let's say between Africa and Europe, you're going to have problems if you're going to need so much time for that vaccination. So you're not going to be able to return to the kind of easygoing traveling, whether it's with regarding tourists or business travel. And so we are in a sense hostage of this situation until we reach those kind of high levels of herd immunity. And maybe some of you are thinking now, if there's anyone listening to this, that what does it matter that because it does seem that, like, for instance, many Africans or in many African countries, the pandemic never really took off as any major problem. Okay, that may be true, and you may actually have many asymptomatic people there of COVID too. But still, even if those people were asymptomatic, but if they come to Europe, if they come to the US, they might actually transmit the disease right back to us. So, and it does raise really kind of risky scenarios. Now, regarding the vaccine, so obviously, the first vaccinations in the trial phases took place sometime, I guess, around late spring. I think more likely in the summer. So we don't know for more than 6-month periods how long the immunity provided by the vaccine is going to be. Now, I don't know if that's really a big problem. It doesn't seem to be if you listen carefully, if you listen to the experts carefully. It seems to me that many of the experts are expecting the immunity to last, I guess, somewhere around anywhere between 1 year and several years. And I guess, us as non-experts can agree that it's not really a big threat. Let's say it's not a big danger if we indeed we need to keep re-immunizing ourselves with those vaccines. But it's just that no one really knows, and that's it. Always really seems to come down to it that even this late in this pandemic year, we don't know how long the immunity will last, and so we're going to need to be vigilant for at least the upcoming year, and see, it's going to take obviously at least 6 months to for any country to reach something of a herd immunity through vaccinations. And from there on, it's going to take obviously at minimum 6 months to just wait and see what the case will be. Now, I've heard some experts say, and usually when I see these experts, I'll try to a little bit evaluate, so a little bit the hierarchy of that expert. I'm sorry to be that judgmental, but I do expect it to be a little bit, higher level expert for the let's say more critical statements. And so one expert, it was sometime earlier this fall. So what they said was that, when you do these mass vaccinations and you reach those, much anticipated herd immunity levels, then it's very likely that the virus will mutate. And when I say mutate, I mean in this kind of way that is going to create issues or challenges. So that is something to be expected. And certainly now we know that there is this, what seems to be a relevant new mutation in the UK. We'll just have to wait and see what happens with that. But what I'm talking about now is looking at it logically, a much bigger challenge, because as non-experts we can also understand that when the majority of the people or the human population reach immunity, that's going to be a major, huge challenge for the virus and its survival. So it's very, very likely in that logic, or through that logic, that there's going to be mutations. Now, we don't know if that's really a big problem yet, but that's something. If you look at the Mr. Christakis, what he was saying, I do believe that's something that was behind that really long tail aftermath scenario that I think he was about to lay out. And so there is this long waiting period, and I'm just very curious to see that how it's going to roll out and what it's going to mean in the coming years, and it will be interesting to see that does it mean that we're going to have to be vigilant in 2022, and in what ways should we be vigilant? Will there be some some adversities with perhaps some people not, wanting to get second round of vaccination, and obviously I'm talking about now the not the idea of having dual shots within short space of time. Rather, I'm talking about that situation where the immunity wanes, because that's something that I do expect to happen, that even if you reach good immunity through these vaccinations, but nonetheless, after 1 year, it's very likely, I think, that the level of immunity is not going to be that good, and that can pose problems then, because as they point out, for instance, I believe it's in the BBC, that you can do the math. It's basically just multiplication. That if, let's say, 75% get vaccinated, and if the level of immunity per person is around 75%, then you can do the math. So it's let me just go right to it. That it's roughly around one half is the level of protection in the population level. Let's say after a year, it's going to be a better situation. Up until about a year, but in the current estimation, but we don't know after that. There's so many questions. But other than that, I can reach in my imagination, that it's probably going to be up until 2022 that we're going to have many issues. Let me just briefly mention that one of the leading, what I believe is to be one of the leading virologists out of India, who's actually living in the States. I'm going to give you the name once I encounter that, but what she said was that she believes that the pandemic in India is going to last up until late 2022. So I think, looking at the things we've been talking about today, certainly is a logical picture what she draws there. So yeah, we can reach 2022 rather easily, but after that, it's anyone's guess. I think it's really interesting to contemplate and imagine the world in let's say late 2022, 2023. And it's really hard to believe that you could have some major mutations, with the virus. I think it's rather the case that you're going to have smaller outbreaks, what you could call epidemics of SARS-CoV-2, and you're going to have, I believe, also people falling victim to it, mortality. But I think it's going to gradually, decrease and decrease ever more, and it's really hard to imagine in late 2022 or 2023 that we would be in any kind of abnormal circumstances. But let me know what you think. Anyone who's watching this. Again, I'm going to be leaving my my email down below in the description box, and it's just really be nice to hear your thoughts. And as for this video, so I'm going to have this apparatus for filming. I'm still in the market for new microphones. Any thoughts on that are also welcome. But other than that, I think it's not time for now for me to end this vlog. And for those of you who are watching this, wish you a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.